Hey, what's going on, everybody? This your boy Jay Mace, aka Jarrell Mason. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry with those in the know and give them their flowers right here be celebrated. With me, I have my good friend. If you're in the 252 area, he'll get you right with them clippers. You know what I mean? My boy JD the Barber. JD, what's good, bro?
What's going on, Red? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man, and I definitely love the hat that you're sporting. God is good all the time, and all the time, God is
God is
good.
good.
Yes, sir. You know what it is. So let's just go ahead and just jump right into some music talk, man. We've been experiencing heavy loss in the past couple of weeks. First, we found out that DJ Clark Kent passed away, and then last week we just lost Q, aka Quincy Jones. The man
Yeah,
stretched decades, connected jazz, pop, rap, and was really one of the first of the old guard to really embrace it when everybody was still looking at it as noise. So let's talk about the impact of those two gentlemen in their respective fields. First, DJ Clark Kent, and then Quincy Jones.
well, Clark Kent 100%, especially when it comes to the whole rap aspect. That whole vibe of that era that I think me and you kind of came up in when we started to appreciate, hip hop, the Jay-Z era, the old the 90s. Just being one of the first pioneers to actually, I guess, kind of like bring that gritty sound to the music business. I always appreciated the mixtapes. I don't even think they do mixtapes no more. I know a lot of times now you'll have your own blend or something like that if you playing, because most time kids today they streaming a lot. So it's like if you continue to stream several songs, eventually the algorithm kind of get a gist of what you like. And so then they'll create your own little mixtape. But back in the day, we relied on DJs such as Clark Kent to kind of be one of those pioneers of the era of blending sound in ways that, kind of rendered a different idea of how we would look at it.
Mhm. Yeah, man, because my first memory of Clark Kent was hearing him do the remix for Spread My Wings by Troop, which came out in
Oh man.
1990. I mean, putting the go-go drums and then sampling Sybil Don't Make Me Over in the breakdown section. I mean, that was
Hmm.
nuts. And you mentioned he did Reasonable Doubt for Jay-Z and various other artists, a sad loss within the hip-hop world. And of course, Quincy Jones, who I mentioned earlier about rap being one of the first of the old guard to really embrace it with his 1989 Grammy Award winning album Back on the Block. So, can we just talk about how
Back on the
Quincy
block.
Jones stretched that gamut from jazz to modern day and how his fingerprints are everywhere?
So yeah, Q, man. But that Back on the Block album was crazy. My favorite cut on that one was the Tevin Campbell Tomorrow that he had up there. And he just had this way of you can tell in their era how they just understood music. Nowadays a lot of it is symphonics and sound machines, and back then it really took an ear. I mean, for the man who orchestrated Thriller for Michael Jackson, I mean, like what more can you say? I know I was listening to what Halloween just passed, and I always listen to the Thriller with the outtakes on it, where him and Mike talking sometimes. Or and one thing I had saw in an interview that Mike said was every time they recorded, Quincy used to always tell him to leave the door cracked a little bit so God could come in. And so after hearing that and then just seeing the the genius in how he pretty much put together scores of music. I mean, The Color Purple. I was just listening to God is Trying to Tell You Something the other day. I mean, his hands has been on so much in the aspect of music that we can't that's true legendary status. I mean, without his career, we wouldn't have half of the music that we even have right
Yeah, I went back and rewatched the documentary that Rashida Jones, his daughter, did with him back in, I believe,
now.
2018, Quincy on Netflix. And just to think about how this man connected Sarah Vaughan, Count Basie, Cab Calloway,
Hmm.
Ray Charles, Big Daddy Kane, Michael Jackson, and went to score music after he was done being an arranger. I mean, he did it all into where, like how you mentioned, he's gonna be felt forever is truly an understatement. And then when we look at the fact that I believe it was 1 out of 3 homes during Thriller's peak. People owned that album. 1 out of 3 homes had Thriller in their
Wow.
collection. So to think about an album that well received by the masses, we won't even see that impact again because when you look at Thriller, while Off the Wall was a success in itself, it didn't have that crossover appeal because it was only regulated to being into the urban categories. Well, at that time it was called black or soul or whatever term you want to use. But Michael, on the outset, wanted to create an album that crossed over and didn't get bounded by any labels, which was why you had cuts that got play on not only urban radio, but top 40 pop mainstream radio and then rock radio because with Beat It, the guitar riff was played by Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, I recall that. He also, he crossed over into the whole MTV ranks as far as having his video played. But all of that, of course, came from the influence of being cultivated by guys such as Q. Um, and so I think with the Thriller album, I can recall you said it was in 1 to 3 households. I remember my mother had the original Thriller album, and so now quite naturally you can go on Amazon and order a replica one. I wish I still had the original one that she bought, but I do have Thrillers hanging up in my kitchen now. Every room got an album in it somewhere, and Thriller you got to have a Michael Jackson somewhere in there. And I do like Off the Wall album. Um, I feel like Thriller was just that crossover. It was what the world needed at that time.
Mhm.
With the theatrics and the videos, the new sound, and I mean, and it's still now when you hear it, it still sound as if it's something new. Every time you hear them doors creaking and the guy laughing in the background, I'm like, yeah, this about to be crazy. And kids still get scared when you play it sometimes.
Right, and the voiceover and the rap for Thriller was the late Vincent Price. And if you look at Edward Scissorhands,
Yes,
he was the narrator in Edward Scissorhands. And I came across an interesting story in regards to Vincent Price and Thriller, where he had the option to either take the upfront money or get the money on the back end off the royalties. He chose the upfront money and missed out on, of course, the royalty money on Thriller. And it was the
oh
opposite
man,
situation with Jason Weaver because he had told the story about how when he was doing The Lion King, they offered him upfront money or get the money off the back end. But mom was like, "Nah, we're gonna play the long game." Chose the money off the back end, and he's eating good off Lion King, and it's 30 years later.
small move, yeah, small move. I think that was the next thing that we learned from those pioneers is how to see the vision. And I think they used to put so much into the music. They knew it was going to be timeless. I don't think now. I don't think now the typical artist that comes out has the attention span of even imagining seeing their project last for decades and life. I mean, who would have thought that Thriller came out before I was born. So who would have thought that I would even know about that right now? You know what I'm saying? And so like my kids know about Michael Jackson. It's so it just takes it to a whole nother level. So I try to look at artists that we have in our days time and see I just can't really see them lasting the test of time when I have grandkids and some of them, but for the most part, it's very few out there that I feel like is having that kind of impact. But I think a lot of that came off the influence of having pioneers around, like Quincy and Clark Kent. I think that because of that, it made the average DJ that you hear now is still going through some of those riffs that they played, and the average music connoisseur. What we find now is that it's all about this microwave generation. Nobody, we got air fryers and we got microwaves, and ain't nobody trying to cook on the stove no more.
Yeah, and as you can see, how we mentioned earlier with social media and with streams, how you can curate your own playlist and how it's not FCC regulated a playlist and it's still pay to play to get that money on the playlist, but you can go directly to your database, get emails, phone numbers, algorithms
Yeah.
view, listening habits, go directly to your fans and market directly to them where you could make a living going off of your niche audience as opposed to catering to the mainstream, almost as beforehand, before rap grew nationally, where it was just regional, where you had pockets of regions in the US. You could be a success in your own region and not really break on a national scale, almost like how Southern Soul is today, where you could just tour these states here, make a comfortable living in this region, and not really go outside nationally.
Yeah, it's almost like the Chitlin circuit, man. Especially down here, where we from, Southern Soul is real heavy. I see a lot of local artists are becoming, they're kind of blending in with some of the quote unquote mainstream Southern Soul singers, and it's weird how they're picking, the demographics in which they travel in order to go to places that people really appreciate the music. But to your point with um, streaming services and things such as YouTube, it's kind of making it on a national front. I see where now they're opening up touring bigger states as opposed to just staying in the southern zone, and so it is changing the way that we view the algorithm and how our music is played. I think now they got it down to a science to pretty much even when you look at an artist that tour, most of the time they're going to tour in the places that they sell the most records at. So sometimes you may have an artist that will never touch down in North Carolina, just because, or certain parts of North Carolina, just because they're not received that well. But with the new ways of being able to monitor your music, you can kind of pick and choose your core and reach those people and make sure that whenever you do go on tour, you make a route through the state in which you're heavily appreciated at.
Yeah, and I was curious, did you see yet the piece by piece Lego movie on Pharrell?
Nope, I want to see that. I've been looking at so many because I've been real heavy on quite naturally he's creative director for Louis Vuitton, and I've been really watching a lot what he's been doing in the fashion world. And then when the commercial came on, because my daughter, all my kids love Legos, but my baby girl, like she really loves Legos, and I was just thinking like, so I didn't know at the time that it was a biopic, and so I really want to see that. Have you seen it
Yeah,
yet?
yeah, it's really dope, very interesting. I was trying my hardest not to be all really hype and really into it because, of course, that was our era, Prime, Neptunes. And then
Yeah.
I'll give you a little tidbit. They did a Lego video rendition of Rump Shaker. And
Oh, really?
I got a kick out of that. I was like, oh, because when I first saw Rump Shaker as a kid, that was the first thing I associated Virginia Beach to. And
Yeah.
where we're from, VA Beach is a little less than 3 hours away, where we're really close to the 757 area of VA. So to see, the Neptunes pop off the way that they did, and then of course when Teddy put Future Studios in Virginia
Hmm.
Beach, that started that whole movement with all of the sound that was coming from the Hampton Roads, Tidewater area
Mm.
of Virginia, and then of course with what Missy and Timberland was doing with Devontae and Sister. And it's crazy to think how, Missy is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Of course,
Yeah.
Neptunes will eventually get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame eventually. So, what was your take when seeing that sound take off with Missy, Timberland, and Neptunes coming from the 757?
What was really crazy about this time, we was in high school, and of course, I did and dabbed a little bit in some rap back in the day. Me and you used to freestyle a lot in school, and I actually got a chance to. So what happened was, I was going to meet. I went and opened up a show for Mr. Cheeks of the Lost Boys, and it was for homecoming in Lawrenceville. I forget the name of the school now, but
St.
it was
Paul.
for a homecoming. St. Paul, that's exactly where it was at. So I went to open up for him down there. So we was there, and right around that time, I was dealing with the manager who had asked us to come down. He had got a connection with a talent show that we had to do that was in Virginia Beach. So we go do the talent show in Virginia Beach, and while we up there, he was like, "Y'all should come over to Teddy Riley's studio." So at the time, we're not assuming that he's gonna be there. I'm just like, okay, we're and then they're looking at the age demographic. They're like, well, y'all this young, y'all don't even know who Teddy Riley is. But again, they didn't realize that we had an appreciation of music that we did. So we go and we're standing outside of the Clips tour bus, was actually the Neptune's tour bus. And so we just standing outside and looking at the studio, and all of a sudden a G500 pull up, and it's Teddy Riley. So we standing outside, and the first thing my man was like, "Yeah, go ahead and rap for him." So we rap for him or whatever. I mean, he vibed to it or whatever the case is. It seemed like he was kind of busy, but he did vibe to it. And he let all of us, rap at the time of the group that I was in. And we actually got pictures with him at his studio and in front of the Neptune's bus. And it was a pretty good experience. I've always had appreciation for another neighboring state. I mean, that was like our era coming up. That was what we grew up on. I mean, just that sound. I even remember Rump Shaker when I used to go to my uncle's house in DC. Was my first time actually hearing that. Not to, at the moment, not knowing that Pharrell had something to put had put some work in with that as well. So I was just like, I was kind of in awe, and I was really at the time like people didn't really understand the caliber of person that was there. Like, this is another legend, you know what I'm saying? And just to be able to grace his presence and know so much of his music from the New Jack Swing era all the way up into what he did for rap music and what he's done for R&B, man. It was just that was a highlight of my quote unquote rap career.
Mhm. And with Pharrell, he's a descendant of the Native Tongues and that whole collective with De La Soul, Moni Love, Queen Latifah, and just recently inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Tribe Called Quest. So, what's your take on Tribe finally getting inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? R.I.P. Fife
I,
Dog.
I think I was about to say RP. I think it's been a long time coming for that entire placement, especially in rap music. I think right now I don't even categorize what we have or what our kids have as equivalent to the taste of the music that we had coming up. So to see guys get their just due that's been doing it for so long, that kind of pretty much ushered us into this generation of even having an opinion on music, I think is always a plus, man. That it's uncomparable what they've done with the era they had in the lack of. Um, Now it's just so many. We have so much at our fingertips that we can utilize, that at the time it was more so like, I mean, just the way that they made music. I mean, now you can get a beat machine and you can be a whole band by yourself. I mean, before, when it was like actually taking live sounds and actually, putting down the raps in different forms and not just punching in every word that you say, it took more skill back then and to create legendary music. So I think they deserve it, and salute to them for their induction.
Yeah, definitely a lot of ingenuity. And I see you got to do the right thing movie poster in the background with Spike
100%.
Lee playing Mookie. And Spike Lee, I believe he directed the video for Scenario for a track called Quest, which when you look back on it was really the breakout for Busta Rhymes because it was right around the time when Leaders of the New School
Leaders of the
was
new
about to
school.
break up. And then
Yeah.
he went on his solo career. Now, there was a biography that Busta Rhymes did on, and even they were highlighting the 50th anniversary of hip hop a year or two ago. And he had told a story about how, they were coming up under Chuck D and Public Enemy, and there was another group that was also coming up under PE. And they told this group in these are the new school, well, they had a different name at the time. Like, y'all gonna battle for this name. This name
Mm.
turned out to be Leader of the New School. And of course, Busta and Dinko and Charlie Brown ended up winning. And of course, they named themselves Leaders of the New School. And then the other group that they were battling for the name, you may remember this group. If not the group, you may remember the two people in the group, young black teenagers that did Tap the Bottle with DJ Scribble
Oh,
and
that's
uh and
crazy. Yeah,
Cameron, who
man.
played Jamal in House
Yeah,
Party 2.
I was about to say, yeah. You see, and that's the thing too. It was like that was a perfect segue, also. But that's the thing too. It was more so like it was just a whole group trying to get on, and when in nurturing talent in those times, you really had to have an ear for it. You really had to, and as being the talent, you really had to want it. So I think what we started to see, if you look at guys like Busta now, who penmanship is still crazier than anybody's out there, who still can hold weight, who can. When we was looking at verses, and a lot of the groups that weren't put on verses, I feel like we would have appreciated more because a lot of the things that we did see is derived from them. And I don't think with the lack of internet in that age or the lack of just visibility by the public, it didn't allow some of those names and stories to go beyond where they were. That's where I feel like you are such a conduit for the generation who didn't get to see those people because you have these stories as if you was there. And I think that that's amazing. I know that that's something I listen to every time I hear your podcast. When I'm like, I can tell that you just a student of the game, and it's like you continue to learn. And I'll be appreciating a lot of the gems you be putting me on to because sometimes even like just putting that together, I forgot all about hearing that story about Busta Rhymes and them battling for the name, and I was like, oh, okay, this crazy. Because then when I see Eminem and them perform on the MTV Awards and he come in reciting some old Buster, I was like, oh, this is crazy. And then we got this young white guy who, pretty much is amplified off of something that this guy did way back in the day just to have a name. You know what I'm saying? And I
Yeah.
think that it's crazy.
Yeah, now your Do the Right Thing poster got me thinking about another tidbit about Do the Right Thing that a lot of people do not know. Do the Right Thing by Redhead Kingpin and the FBI was this close to being the theme for Do the Right Thing, but it got beat out by Fight the Power by P.
Oh wow. Well, I can see that being a Spike Lee call. Just having that, and I'm kind of, I think it would have been kind of cool either way. Now that you say that though, but I do like the whole, I like the direction they went with it.
Yeah, the message with Fight the Power and Chuck D's booming bass, the command, and with Flavor Flav being his jovial, joking sideman self, and one of the top 10 rap records of all time, and the
Oh,
opening with
100%.
Rosie Perez dancing, and it just really made it all come together, really have it all make sense. Now, I want to go to, we mentioned Busta Rhymes, we mentioned Teddy Riley and how he meshed hip hop and R&B. I think a lot of people looking at it now look at what BBD did in the Poison album. It's really that first meshing of hip hop and R&B, and they worked with the Bomb Squad, Hank Shockley, Keith Shockley, Eric Sadler, and really took that gritty, dirty New York hip hop sound, applied some R&B feel appeal to it, and set themselves apart from the New Edition identity and look that Ronnie, Ricky, and Mike were known for. And to top it off, when putting Poison together, they sampled Cool G Rap and DJ Polo's Poison. And I know Cool G
G-Rap.
Rap
Yeah.
is eating good right now because of that sample in Poison.
Oh, 100%. I know that, and it's back to what you were saying about on the long back end, whenever you um creating great music that's timeless. I think in the moment sometimes you don't realize that that's what was going on. And so when you still hear those cuts being played now, or um especially in new movies or soundtracks where they're trying to redo a lot of this stuff. I'm surprised they ain't tried to do the right thing again. They didn't touch almost every other classic. Um, I think it gives a rebranding of those sounds. So it's like now when if we do see a part two of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, I mean you still get to get a glimpse of what the sounds were around whenever the original was out. So sometimes just having that, putting out that great music again, it lets you live forever, man. It's like the fountain of youth.
hmm Yeah, and there was a couple years ago, speaking of Found the Youth, Michael Bivins was doing an interview promoting the New Edition story. He was talking about how the whole Atlanta movement, what was coming out of there, really got popped off, set the stage by ABC and Crisscross. If you think about it,
Yeah.
two young kid groups really set the stage for everything to come out of Atlanta after that. And of course, LA and Babyface was down there doing their thing with LaFace and all the talent come out of that. But if you think about ABC and Crisscross, we were a couple years younger than ABC and Crisscross, but we were in that Target demo when Cooling at the Playground and Totally Crossed Out came out. And
Hmm.
I didn't really think about it until listening to the lyrics of Jump just recently about how technically it was like an ABC diss.
It was a diss track. Yeah,
Don't try to
yeah.
compare us to
Yeah,
another bad little
yeah,
bad
still
that I
the
like
bad little
and don't
fat
be
and
claiming don't be claiming that it's
yeah,
mental. I mean, direct shot at
yeah.
ABC.
And it's crazy because I heard when I think Jermaine Dupri had mentioned that one time before, and I was looking at the Michael Bivins documentary that he did. It was real nice. When he was kind of brushing up on some of the old situations that went on back in the day. And again, even hearing that Michael Jackson sample, you know what I'm saying? Like you would have never known, at the time that that's what was going on because they tailored it so well so that you just rapping the song and had your clothes to the back. I remember taking trips to DC to see my uncle, and the difference in the radio stations that were played, technically that's considered more up north than here in the south. So we would get a whole different vibe just traveling and hearing the radio station change. And I was just thinking about like now how any region of the world you can just pinpoint anything. I mean, if you want to hear what's going on in Europe right now, we can do it. But before you used to have to travel and get those sounds because it just wasn't playing in every genre wasn't in every area like it is now. So we
Mhm.
weren't as universal, but just that whole ABC and crisscross connection, that was crazy. I just remember driving on the way up to DC and changing to the radio station and hearing crisscross of there, and then going and recording the songs on the radio, and you have it on your tape, and it was different, man. I kind of miss that era.
Yeah, that was definitely, I think, a lucrative opportunity missed between JD and Biv to have ABC and Crisscross go on tour. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, both were at their height, especially Crisscross. I mean, they were opening up for Michael Jackson and in the Jam
Mm-hmm.
video, had the Sega CD Make My Video. Crisscross was huge. And then, of course, their DJ Nabs, from NC, from Durham,
Mm-hmm.
Pool City.
Yep. And that's another Bull City got a lot of roots that run deep, especially in the whole rap game. I think Big Daddy Kane reside out there now, or Rakim, one of them. I know one
Yeah.
of those two they reside in North Carolina. And it's always been a hub because we was the midway point between, pretty much down. So we had a little bit of everything. So
We
it
were
was
in the
like,
middle.
either you going up north or you going down south. We right here in the middle. So a lot of people had to pass through here, you know what I'm saying? And I know that it's a lot of ties to the Greensboro and the Durham area because that was just one of the places that Bull City was just one of those places they would stop. A lot of legends, coming from out of that way too, especially in the newer era with Little Brother and what's the DJ name, man?
You're not talking about
Did the
J.
beat
Cole.
for Jay Z on
Oh, Ski Beats.
wasn't it Cole? Another one,
Ski
Ski
Beats.
Beats. You know what I'm saying? It's just so many. Yeah, it's so many. That's out the Winston Salem area. I mean, it's so many right up in that little hub that it was that tri-state area. It's different.
Yeah, and then of course you got out of Fayetteville, aka Vietnam, J. Cole, then of course 252,
J
Snow
Cole,
Hill, Rhapsody. What was your take on Please
Rhapsody.
Don't Cry if you haven't heard it yet?
I've yet to hear it. I've my brother he had sent me. I remember him sending me a link to it, and just ain't got around to visiting it yet. But what you think about it?
Dope record. She's definitely keeping true lyricism alive and sharp with the pen game. And of course, she's an alumnus of
I've been
NC
hearing
State.
I've been hearing a number of good reviews on it, and lately, what have I been on? Lately, I still been on the last Little Brother album. I know that they just put out a nice documentary
Mhm.
recently, and then they toured. They kind of went and did a little reunion show back in Durham. I think they had Nas out there with them. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm,
um, it's always crazy to hear like somebody that's right down the road. You know what I'm saying?
mm.
Stepping it up to that level, making that kind of music.
Yeah, May the Lord Watch was definitely a good doc. Seeing, Fonte and rapper Big Pooh. And then of course when they did the reunion show, they had I believe Ninth was out there too. I first got put
Yeah.
on Little Brother when I entered at UNCG, and there was a copy of The Listener in the radio
Mm.
station. And when I first heard it, I was like, yo, what is this? And had to get a copy of the Listening Minstrel Show, and then of course the foreign exchange stuff with
The foreign
Fonte
exchange.
and Nicolay. Connected is
Nicolay.
actually one of my top five hip hop records of all time. The Connected
I
album.
can, yeah. Foreign exchange was crazy. I remember that era was when, so we was going into college right around the same time, and I was out at A&T, and I I was introduced to a rapper by the name of Jay Gunn by my brother, and who had ended up he signed with man, I want to say was it MC Light. Um, And so we was doing a lot of little local backpack music or whatever the case is. And Little Brother was like the topic of conversation because they had came from right across, over at Central. And quite naturally, with A&T and Central always having like a quote unquote rivalry, it was
Mhm.
just cool to hear what they had going on that side as opposed to what we were trying to produce on our side.
Yeah, and it's been a great year for golden era hip hop artists. You had the Common P Rock album, MC Light
Yes.
just dropped a project, Rakim dropped a project, and
Mm-hmm.
LL dropped his project,
LL.
and how they're still showing like, hey, we're not gonna rest on our laurels. We're gonna still put out content because there's still people that want to hear new music from us.
Oh, 100%. I don't think that. I think the thing is staying true to yourself. I think, the elder statesmen of the rap game, the best ones are the ones who stay true to them. I know sometimes you can kind of blend in with what's going on right now, but I think it's only true. I think I like when they stay just true to the craft and
Mhm.
whatever they're actually feeling. Because I mean, as you continue to grow, I mean, your thought process change. I mean, sometimes your delivery may change. You may be inspired by something different. I think Common is one of those ones who just knew he just stuck with who he was and he know what he does well. LL pretty much all of them, they just know what they do well, and that's what they do. They just play their role. I'm not trying to step in this lane or that lane.
Right.
AZ, he just recently released a project, maybe about a year ago now. Same thing. They still sound time Nas when he went on the run with Hit Boy. And it's like it just sounds like they get younger and younger because they just find their niche and they just stick in it. And I always think that that's cool as a rapper.
Yeah, and AZ, one of the most underrated rappers.
A
He's
hundred
like your
percent.
favorite rappers. And
Mm-hmm.
just thinking about the evolution of, rap artists diversifying their portfolio, their brands. It's crazy to see Cam and Mace doing It Is What It Is, where you and I, we both grew up with Mace and Cam as rappers. Cam had us rocking Pink for a minute, not me. And of
Yep.
course, Mace with the Harlem World album. But, you know,
Yeah.
talk about to see the evolution of rappers going from being just that to diversifying portfolios and their brands to where a generation of kids only know them for okay, Cam and Mace, they're the sportscasters, Joe Budden, podcaster, and this person is this, but not knowing that because of rap, you got this.
And I think that's cool. I don't think you're ever too young to reinvent yourself. I mean, too old to reinvent yourself. Even now, where I'm at mentally, I just always think about the next best thing or who I'm gonna be in the next 5 or 10 years. And a lot of people I know with Mike Tyson, he was speaking on his podcast one day about how he went to visit some kids at school and they only knew him from the Hangover movie. And he was like, I had to go and put on my some of my old fights on YouTube just to let them see exactly what I did. And I think it's cool when you can reinvent yourself because it gives you limitless possibilities. I mean, what if you only had to do one thing? Now that you realize this avenue brought you here, and it's like you still have your foundation so it's like everything else just ascending. And so I like what people are doing and diversifying themselves especially Cam and Mace. That's a good look. Which is crazy because I don't know if you recall, but I remember you gave me the book, The Light After the Lime, that Mace wrote, and I read it. I don't remember what grade we was in, but this was right around the time when he was transitioning from rap and getting into religion. And it was a book. He had The Light After the Lime. I think that's what it was. And I remember you giving me that book to read, and I never forgot that.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's crazy when you think about, everybody diversifying their brands, their portfolios, and Paramount Plus, they just released, as of the taping of this podcast, a documentary series called Larger Than Life, documentary about boy bands. And that era of pop, the late 90s, early 2000s, really been looked at with fondness now, although what we know now about Lou Pearlman and scheming his way to the top and all of that stuff. But you can't deny that, with Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, that he knew talent and knew that, hey, these guys have something. And then we can go further back how Maurice Starr, a black man, put together the
Hmm.
world's biggest pop group. So can we just talk about how I feel personally Maurice Starr doesn't get his just due with discovering New Edition, and of
Right.
course putting together New Kids on the Block,
Kids
which
on the Block.
paved the way for Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, 98 Degrees, and all the boy bands to follow.
See, again, is always what is a line to say a midget standing on a giant's shoulders can see much further than a giant. So a lot of times what happens is the people that's on your shoulders gonna see a lot further than you do. And in the generations ahead, it's like to have that vision, he had to see that this what it would become. Whether it was gonna be even seeing what happened with the Jackson Five, and I don't think they really reached a plateau as a group. It was really just about Mike. But when it came down to New Edition and New Kids on the Block, it was different because they were like universal, and it was like so at the time, and seeing that now, when you come into this new generation of, I guess, say people of our age, and we start seeing NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, we feel like this never happened before. You know what I'm saying? It's like, especially if you don't really follow your music. So when you start seeing them, you're thinking, well, this is big as it's ever been. But when you really go back, you realize it really is not. Now it's more lights, it's more money, it's more opportunities. But I mean, I can remember, they had Backstreet Boys, everything. You can get dolls, you can get like, I mean, it was so much stuff that they was trend setting on. But again, the value in it just didn't concede like it does now, just because they didn't have the same backing as far as with every opportunity that could have been utilized. But I agree with you. I think a lot of times those pioneers of the days before us, they had a vision, and sometimes it get alleviated by the light and the lime of what's going on right now, as if we never seen this before. We've seen it before, just in not this capacity.
Right. And when you think about New Edition and their legacy, how together and solo paved the way for individuals and groups, and how they're
Yeah,
still
yeah,
touring, got the Vegas residency, still standing 40 plus years later, and been through many storms that most groups necessarily don't even survive from. And then, of course,
right.
Backstreet Boys still out and about and touring, and in sync, Justin doing his solo stuff. But, to think about how that era of pop and R&B is celebrated. And when you look at the K-pop movement with BTS and all the groups coming out of there, they pretty much followed the blueprint that was
Right.
laid by those pop R&B artists, but it's just amplified because of they're really investing in the development of their acts, almost like how Motown was doing charm school and artist boot camp.
Yeah,
You want to
yeah.
make sure that you were well developed and well seasoned before coming out.
I always thought that was cool. I think that's the same, quite naturally, that's the same era where you get the Quincy Joneses, production type, and so you start seeing where the talent that they do produce is so well versed, even outside of just the talent they produce, and so you find good people, or you find someone who can groom other talent into with the same infrastructure, because a lot of times. I think it's just having that person around that really is gonna cultivate what they see in you that you might not see in yourself. And with what you see in those groups, like now, the fact that they still can stand for this long, it had to be cultivated talent. It had to be just a whole lot of um, practice, work ethic, nonstop. And I think now once in a lot of today's era, we don't get the same talent because we don't get the same work ethic. So we'll have a talented group or a talented artist who will never see the potential of these groups that came before they even had the opportunities that's presented now and made it for, this many decades, as opposed to groups coming out now that sometimes don't last for 2 to 3 years just because they don't have that discipline. And I think that's where your Maurice Stars and your Quincy Joneses come in at, is because of that. Like they gave them that foundation, and I think that was very important for our generation and our time.
Right, and as we saw in the New Edition story, Brooke Payne, whose choreographer also happened to be Ronnie DeVoe's uncle, really put
Right.
New Edition to work because they were formed in 78. Candy Girl didn't pop off to 83, but they were cutting their teeth in and around Boston performing in the local talent shows. So they were already seasoned before the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the world saw them.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, New Kids, they came up under the same cloth where they were performing in majority R&B urban audiences, and by the time MTV and the pop world got a hold of them, it was easy because their whole marketing strategy initially was to go R&B first because they put out a version of the video for Please Don't Go Girl, which only got airplay on BET. And once pop radio and MTV got a hold of them, that was when they shot the better version, and that
Right.
was the rest was history. But New Kids was R&B to the core. So when I interviewed Danny, he was just talking about how it was kind of weird once the pop train took off because at the end of the day, there were an R&B group, and Donnie said it himself in their Behind the Music that they did back in '08 when they first got back together, that pop was by accident. They were
Mm.
put together, and the music that they put out was to win over the R&B consumer. Then I believe Donnie had also told that a lot of the stuff that ended up going on his brother, Mark Wahlberg, I believe initially he was going to cut it for himself for a solo record,
Mm.
but he ended up putting it on Mark because Mark was out and about roaming the streets and was really getting into trouble, and mom was like, "You gotta do something to help your brother out," and that took off his
That's
career,
amazing.
and he flipped that to be a world-renowned, respected actor.
100%. That's amazing that, and like even just knowing that, it give you a lot more respect for the talent because in order for you to see that in another person or be willing to give that to another person, that got to be engulfed in love, and but at the same time, it still got to be nurtured talent in order to let it manifest.
Right. And I don't know if you ever heard of this group called Highland Place Mobsters.
I've seen them on a playlist or something here and there. The name sound familiar.
So they were signed to LaFace, and it was three guys that were originally in a group separately. They rebranded themselves in Highland Place Mobsters. And then there was another gentleman that was in the group. He was put into the game by George Spinderella Irby from Climax, who's also from NC Fayetteville, I believe. And one of his first production credits was Hey Mr. DJ for her featuring Dougie Fresh. And then he went on to produce two records on Troop's Attitude album, My Music and I'll Always Love You. And then, of course, transitioned to work on ABC and then Boys to Men on Coolie Eye Harmony. And later, his later work with TLC and a list of others. And the person I'm talking about that's also was in Highland Place Mobsters was a young Dallas Austin.
Wow. That's amazing. See, again, just that history, man. Like you can't you can't put that in words, man. Just knowing and see, it gives you a whole new insight of now. It's like when you're looking at it, you're more so dissecting the group as opposed to just looking at the surface level talent. So when you start seeing again where they originated from and the foundation that they have, it just makes where they are and what the groups that they took further. It just gives it more. more respect.
Hmm. Yeah, and speaking of Dallas Austin, I feel Cool Air Harmony is Boyz II Men's best album. Almost kind of similar to the Off the Wall Thriller conversation, because to me too was Boyz II Men's Thriller. But when you look at
Mm,
when they first dropped, they dropped in '91 with Cool Air Harmony. Motown Philly was the lead off single. And I think Michael Bivins had said in his documentary of The Hustle at 617 Mike Biv that originally Boyz II Men was a slow burn. Motown Philly was a slow burn, and then they didn't really start heating up until End of the Road, which was on
mm,
Boomerang. He told a
right.
backstory about how he had to do a mind trick on Gerald Busby, the late Gerald Busby, who was head of Motown when Boyz II Men was signed, about how this record was a ballad, but I guess Boyz II Men they didn't want to be pigeonholed in ballads, and that Gerald Busby didn't really like the record. So Biv ended up doing a workaround, calling L.A. Reid, told L.A. Reid, like Gerald said that this was the best record ever and that we should go with it.
Mm,
And then Gerald Busby heard it on the radio and dressed Mike down. But Mike was smart and knew that, hey, this is going to work on them because they were different than fellow NC native group Jodeci. That
right.
the men had that clean cut pop pill that was gonna go to the suburbs and really play well in middle of America, because once you look at End of the Road, of course it broke Elvis Presley's record for the longest weeks running at #1 for a song, and everything to come after that once two dropped that really set the stage for him for End of the Road. So can you talk about Boyz II Men's impact on the music industry?
Yeah, they with just the whole history and and transitioning from being under Michael Bivins tutelage and leading up to just where they ended up. Even the name of the group, what I'm saying, it's after one of their songs or whatever the case is. And then I recall, of course, even with how they was kind of transcending when I think they did it was the Grammys, and they had on the Jordan 10s, and they was and it was just different. It kind of gave that they had a they had like this touch of, it was like the regular guy that was just trying to be a good person, and and it didn't have that bad boy image as in you may see in the Jodeci or a lot of the other groups, because a lot of the times the R&B guys would try to formulate this vibe of a bad guy just because they're singing. Bobby Brown had it, but then it's like to see just clean cut guys look like they could have been college students, just really singing their heart out. And I think that they did extremely well. And then even seeing One Ye's kids with forming a group now, they're an uncomparable group, man. It's amazing what they did for the game.
Definitely can't understate that. And Jodeci, like mentioned earlier, their influence cannot be understated enough. From the crib, from NC, Casey, JoJo, Dalvin,
100%. Yeah.
and Devontae, and
Devontae.
how, when you think of Jodeci, you think about those well layered, stacked harmonies, KC with those church vocals, pretty much
Mm-hmm.
Bobby Womack to the T, and Devontae with his production. And I believe I was looking up a story on Jodeci. They were saying that some of those cuts on Forever My Lady were already cut before they made the drive to New York from Charlotte to go in search of a deal at Uptown.
Mm. So yeah, and I think that too is like it knowing that the talent was already there. That's like that's just natural talent. A lot of that you can't recreate, and a lot of times I see them try to do that. They'll they have a new artist out, and they'll oh, this the next, or um it may give you a vibe of somebody, but at the end of the day, it can't be recreated, no matter how much the voice comparison, or where they come from. I mean, Jodeci, I mean, just legendary, man. You'll never touch that.
And one R&B group that I felt was very underrated, but you know them if you really do your deep dive, They did records for Mary J. Blige, they Reminisce, they did Try My Love by Shinehead, did All I Want for Father MC off the Close to You album, and then put out their own albums 1993 and 1995 respectively. Intro.
I heard her intro. Yeah, I always known of them. I think my sister she used to listen to them. Kind of often. It was like back in the day. It was just like a long playlist of just hearing all the just kind of like what we were speaking about before. My older cousins and my older siblings they would pretty much formulate the soundtrack of my life. So
Mhm.
I would come and find that I was introduced to I would say 90% of the music that I would listen to back then because I was, it was stuff that they wanted to hear. And so now I find myself, diving into, the origins of a lot of music now to try to find samples, or I'm playing the old school song while my daughter is playing the new version of it and she playing. I'm like, you ain't never heard this before? She's like, nah, I used to. Then I'm like, I used to play it all the time. So then I go and find one of those old groups and pull it out and let them, kind of get a gist of actually where it come from. And sometimes we can even go beyond that person if the sample is taken multiple times.
Mm.
But I think that's cool to have that foundation in knowing who started a lot of the things that we listen to or consider, good music.
Yeah, because like Glorilla, she had a digital track. It wasn't on the actual physical release of her album. You'll Never Find, which samples My Love Is the Shh by Something for the People.
Something for the people.
And
I remember that.
her album, direct descendant of all the classic Memphis hip hop with 3 6 Mafia, Project Pat, Eight
That's
Ball,
all they
and
doing there, man.
he pretty
I think
much
that
regenerated that style and sound of
yeah.
Memphis hip hop.
I think, in a way, I think it's cool. In a way, I think it's cheating. If I took a classic and put some vocals over top of it, I mean, it's kind of easy because the person is actually, when you hearing the song, you actually, I hear Big Sean did Get On Up by Jodeci. He just recreated that, and it's like, nice song. I love it, like Big Sean. But at the end of the day, when I play that song, I just
Mhm.
want to turn it off and go play the Jodeci song. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Because I get it. It's for the kids and all. But
Mhm.
those renditions sometimes it sometimes it can take away from the
Right.
legacy of the sound.
Right. And I think time removed, I think, at least for me, I've grown to have more of an appreciation for T-Pain. Because when
Oh,
T-Pain first
100%.
came out,
Yeah.
I didn't really care for him because,
Me either.
auto tune I thought was very hooky, very
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
very long lasting, but he's proved me and a lot of people wrong. I mean, his pen game, impeccable, voice,
Yeah.
recognizable,
Yeah.
and he knows
Even
what he
when you
wants.
take the auto tunes off of it, you know what I'm saying? He
Mm-hmm.
can actually sing like extremely well. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And I think that a lot of times people wasn't giving him the credit
Mm-hmm.
for, like you said, for his pen or his natural talent.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, it's crazy to see how next year it will be 20 years in the game for Chris Brown
Yeah. Another man, I
from Right
feel
Up the
like
Road in Tappahannock.
yeah, man, I feel like his career it took a turn, when he
Mm-hmm.
went through his situation. I
Mm-hmm.
like to see that he's still on his game. And
Mm-hmm.
again, yeah, you can't. If I seen anything in my life that's close to Michael Jackson, it got to be him. Period.
Chris Brown, and of course, Usher. Not a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
people
yeah.
talk about at least Usher's first album because a lot of people look at it as okay,
See,
the material's too old and didn't really mesh,
um,
didn't really fit. And of course, once he got with JD for My Way,
I was
that was
about to
when
say,
everything
yeah,
really took off for him. So to see him still standing still torn in this year's 20 years since Confessions.
yeah.
To be
Which
honest, it took me a minute for Confessions to grow on me.
yeah, me too. I was looking at a Jermaine Dupri interview and he was talking about like that was really his story. When he people don't give Jermaine Dupri enough respect either, man.
Mm-mm.
When you were talking about that was pretty much his story, on both of those confessions, and it was just like he had the right person to usher in, no pun intended, but to usher in the emotion that he was feeling when he was writing the song. And Usher just did a great job with it. I mean, again, you can't take away from the hit making skills that he possessed, man.
Yeah, you talk about JD. I believe he's in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. Definitely going to
Yeah,
be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame soon. Just to think about how
100%.
his career started off as a dancer on the Fresh Fest on his
Mm-hmm.
dad's tour, who was
On
Michael
his
Malden,
father's
put
tour.
together
Yep.
the Fresh Fest, and then did Silk Times Leather, then gave us Crisscross, then started So So Def, gave us Escape, Jagged Edge, The Brat,
Yeah.
Bow
Yeah.
Wow, and all the acts that followed,
Yeah.
JD,
Franchise boys.
Franchise Boys. Even now, when you think about that whole Snap era, it
He
was
ran it. It was
definitely
like another
well
form
appreciated.
of yeah, it was like another form of a quick vibe of some New Jack Swing. It was just like it was different. It all had that same swing to it, and it just made you want to dance. And
Right.
so, and you would see other rappers come in the game and try to recreate it, and they just couldn't do it, but they were still trying to catch that sound. Every now and then, the game get a sound,
Right.
and I think JD is known for that one.
And then one rapper who was viral before viral when social media went its infancy. Nobody really talks about how Soldier Boy
Soldier Boy,
changed the game. I mean, with Crank Dad and
oh,
I got
hundred
me some
percent.
baby names. But just to think about, Haiti did that when social media was at its peak, as opposed to when it was just getting started. Imagine how big of a viral sensation he would have been.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I agree with that. When I look at him and see, he was setting trends before trends was in, and it was like I just knew that Soldier Boy stuff was not gonna grow on me. But now when that song come on, it's still an instant. You just remember that time. It's like he was just he had he found lightning in a bottle, man, and he just ran with it.
Yeah, it's a floor grabber, and to think, the finger snap era came after the crunk era, and Little John's careers that spans back to when Social Def was putting out those Social Def bass all star compilations. Because I believe he was working at
I
Social
remember that.
Def in the offices on that, and those records were legendary in itself. Those Social Def bass all star compilations.
Yeah,
Uh,
I remember those. What was that? Shorty Swing My Way.
yeah,
A
KP and
lot of
Envy.
yeah, Ghost Town DJs back in the day. But I remember them playing it all around that same time back when this may be like elementary school coming up in those little
Hmm.
dances, and you
Hmm.
always got the little bass stuff going on. It was pretty
Hmm.
smooth.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
with Shorty Swing My Way, Envy's from Weldon, right?
yeah, mm-hmm, yeah,
Yeah, so it was crazy to see that record pop off and then come to find out that she
yeah,
was from the crib. That made
yeah.
it, even more extra special
Listen,
and extra exciting. Now, I want to close you out on this. Where do you see the future of music going in the next 5 years? And do you think that there's going to be that one artist that's going to be that generation's big thing to say, hey, we want to cultivate it back the old way to where we want an artist that's going to sustain and not be here today, gone today, and go by just the algorithm?
I think it's going. I think it's actually going back to kind of where we started our conversation from. I think it's going back to you know the um the southern vibe. Um I think people are really appreciate simplicity in good music as opposed to complication in right now music. The simplicity in good music will last forever. I mean, it don't have to be a complicated lyric or too much. I hear 50 Cent say a lot of times about the way he searched for talent. It's just like he need to find that right guy. You just gotta have an ear for it. And so and as far as an artist that's out right now, I don't I think we still got legends that's left to live. So as of right now, I still see a lot of the legends just still staying in place. As far as somebody on the come up, what's my man name? October London.
October London.
Yeah, I think he the fit.
hmm And just to touch on real quick before we go, just thinking about Snoop and how seeing him on The Voice and how he was all over the TV during the Olympics in Paris, and then of course Dr. Dre with Beats by Dre, and how
Right.
now he could just live off the Beats by Dre money and
Mm-hmm.
not even put out another record. But just to think that 30 plus years ago, Snoop was like, fighting for his life with murder was the
Mm.
case and could
Yeah.
possibly go to jail, and now he's America's sweetheart. So talk about real quick that transition to see Snoop being beloved worldwide and Dre being the ultra talent that he is. And if it wasn't for Dre, we would
Grayson.
have 50, we wouldn't even have Eminem, and of course no Kendrick, all of that coming from Dre.
Yeah, I think it's all grace and mercy, man. I think if it just go to show that, God always got something for you, no matter what. They both faced some tremendous, even Dre with the aneurysm recently.
Mhm.
And of course, all that Snoop has been through in his career, being in just situations where a lot of people would have never made it out of. It's just a testament that God is still on the throne, man, and He's still got for um as long as you want to prosper and put in the work, I believe that He'll see it to fruition. So I think yeah, yeah, man. So I feel like, when you see that you still have a chance no matter what you face in life, I think it's just always a testament. When I saw Snoop at the Super Bowl and when he was at the Olympics and seeing Dre at the Super Bowl, seeing what Hove is doing for the NFL, and then seeing all this young talent come from under them, man, it's just a sign that they got a second win, and I think that's a blessing.
Yeah, it's definitely a blessing, to think about when we came up, seeing Dr. Dre and the Chronic, Snoop Doggy Style this year. It's actually the 31st year of Doggy Style, and the Chronic 32 years. And to think about those albums came out in back-to-back years, 92, 93, respectively. So before we wrap this interview, bro, any shout outs you want to give, and where can the people find you on the socials?
Man, I want to shout out to you again. This is our second time around. I have to get you on the podcast. So I want to shout out my wife and I. We just started a podcast. It's called God is My Witness. You can find that on all your social media platforms, and you can get me at JD Cut Me. The barber. You know what I'm saying? That's what I do. And you can get her at Serene Accents, where she sells body butter and women's etiquette things. And so that's we just trying to formulate a team and kind of show people a side of marriage that I think a lot of people don't get to see, and in hopes that it will help other relationships and help cultivate ours as well, while we use it as just a form of therapy, man.
Yeah, he'll definitely get you right. Not like Bibby the Barber in Atlanta. If you know, you know. Shout out to Fayetteville native Brian Tyree Henry, who played Paperboy, who's definitely out doing this thing. And if you want to support the podcast and help fill my belly, not with that Riley's BS, you can go to facebook.com/beyond the album cover. Go to wherever you stream podcasts and on the official YouTube channel at youtube.com/beyond the album cover. Once again, it's been a pleasure with my bro. JD, fellow classmate, class of '04. Shout out to those
Oh,
Canes.
for
We just recently
yeah,
celebrated our 20th
20
year
years.
anniversary. We still young, still got that look, even though we got a little salt, a little pepper. It's
There you
all
go.
good. But
No
age
shave
comes with,
November.
yeah, no shave November. Age comes with wisdom, baby. So, JD, thank you for
100%.
coming on to the podcast, bro. And look forward to doing it again soon, my man.
Appreciate it, real. Love you, man.
Yes, sir.